Hello, it's Maker Melissa from Maker Melissa's Lab. In this video I will be starting the build for the LAC table enclosure for my 3D printer. The i3 Prusa Mark III with the MMU2S upgrade. So I have here is I have a couple LAC tables plus the one that the printer is on now. I have a bunch of 3D printed parts that I spent probably around 180 hours at least printing. I have 4 of these kind of leveling feet, which is part of that 180 hours. I have hardware for the print cabinet, which I got from Fastenal. I have these screws for the feet, which I got at Home Depot. And I have a bunch of these acrylic sheets that I got from Tap Plastics. Let's get started. Okay, as I was going to prepare for this step, I realized a couple things. One, the metric bolts that I got for this step actually needed to be pointy, so I ran to Home Depot really quick and I got these. These aren't metric, but they're only going into the wood, so they don't need to be metric, so I just looked up tables and got the closest sizes as I could. Another thing was I found a mistake in the original printed files that I had done, where it included only 2 sets of bottom pieces instead of a bottom and a top, so I'm actually printing that off right now. And there was also an update posted, so now you can actually mount the power supply onto the outside of the enclosure, and so I will be printing that off, and that'll probably be overnight. So the first step is we're going to go ahead and assemble a LAC table. And here it is. Let's go ahead and insert magnets into all the parts. We're gonna need these parts. And they slip right in there. And next we'll go ahead and insert these screws, which I believe are M3 by 30. And the magnets keep them closed. Next we're going to go ahead and put this up to the corner. These little spacers here are supposed to keep you from putting it exactly right up to the edge, and that's so that it aligns with the leg, which is inset a little bit as well. I'm putting them right up to where it kind of transitions from being a flat surface to the curved edge. Oh, hi, spring roll. Come here. Here's spring roll. There you go. You may remember her from a previous video. So the next step is I had gotten some wood screws and they weren't quite, they would work, but I also found these which seem like they're going to have a little bit better hold that I had in my extra screws, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. Let's see if this works. Okay, I've gone ahead and finished attaching the corners. I kind of messed up on the first time I did it. I had it off and I came up with actually a pretty good technique. What I did is I took one of these drill bits that barely fit in the hole, and then I put it in, turned it by hand to kind of mark the spot, and then I switched it for the smaller drill bit that I used to drill the hole for the screw. Removed the piece, drilled it where it was marked, worked perfect every time. I ended up switching tables with the one that the printer's on, which will end up being the bottom table. And I have these brackets that I had printed off that have it offset, so that'll work just fine. I've gone ahead and reprinted the new top pieces, which have the hole on the other side of the bracket, so these will be on the top of the door. And I've gone ahead and finished attaching these. So the next step will be to attach 4 legs to these areas here. A while back I had purchased a set of metric drill bits, which I believe went up to like 13 millimeters, and during my move I had misplaced the box of them, and I had all the spares that came with the set, which went up to 8 millimeters. And so that'll cover the 2, 5, and 8 millimeter drill bits that are required for this project, but I also needed a 10, so I've gone ahead and ordered that off of Amazon, and that should be here over the next couple days. So I went to go attach these, the legs, and I realized the little bolt that went with the hinge is in the way of the leg. So I went to go put it in on the reverse side, and what I started realizing is it was kind of barely holding on, and if it's flat, this just gets all wobbly and stuff. So what I'm doing is I'm pushing it in there, and then I went ahead and grabbed some super glue here. It's Loctite super glue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a tiny little drop on the end of the bolt here. And this is just the gel kind. And because I don't want to wait an eternity for this to dry, a little trick you can do is just putting a tiny bit of water on the super glue, and it instantly hardens it. So now I have the nut in there, and it is hardened on there and acts like Loctite. The reason I didn't want to use the liquid kind is because I didn't want it going down in there and then blocking up the mechanism here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on the other one, reattach the plastic parts, and then put on the other 2 legs. And here it is. This is the second day I've gone ahead and printed off the parts for doing the power supply here. I've gone ahead and measured this tube out, which is actually the next step, and we're going to go ahead and drill a hole through the table. And that is going to go about right here. And I went and I measured some drill bits, and I found this 15-30 seconds drill bit is about the exact same diameter as the outside of the tube, using some calipers. And so instead of getting a 12 millimeter drill bit, I'm just going to go ahead and use this. So that's going to be the next step, is installing that. And here it is. I now have the hole in place, and I need to take the power supply off of the printer and mount it with this bracket. Put this brace in place of the power supply so that there is still structural integrity on the printer itself, and we'll be good. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove the power supply. Hi, I wanted to give you a few updates. First of all, I went ahead and On this bracket I started installing it, and it kind of split here when I was trying to insert a nut using the method recommended in the Prusa printer manual. So I went ahead and I printed off another one, but this time I decided to use a heat set iron here. It has a special tip here. You can get these through Adafruit, same with the iron, or you can just use a Hakko iron if you want. That one just has a variable temperature on it too, which is nice, because I was going to be building a heat set insert rig, and I just happened to have that sitting around. So I've gone ahead and done that. I had to do a little bit of cleaning out with a drill bit and an X-Acto knife, but it seems to be fitting pretty well, and I can go ahead and continue on that. I decided I'm actually going to not do the printer yet. I'm going to finish building out the cabinet, and then I'm going to mount the brackets when I'm ready to put the printer into it. The main thing I had to get done was the hole on there through the table, because it's going to be kind of hard with the plexiglass walls, and that's good. I'm happy with that. Another update is one of the pieces of camera equipment I have is this Manfrotto Magic Arm. It's the 143, and it kind of broke on me. It makes this loud cracking sound if you move the lever, and it doesn't hold the camera anymore. It has a standard warranty of 2 years, and I've had this for 2 months. So it was probably a manufacturing defect. And I contacted Amazon customer support, and they're having me send it back, which is great, and giving me a refund for it. And so I ordered another one, and that should be here sometime next week. So for now, I ended up putting the camera on my Joby Gorilla Pod, which seems to be working well enough for this, and I'm going to continue with the table. For the next step, I need to go ahead and prepare the tabletop, which will end up being kind of the lid for the whole cabinet. And so that requires me kind of cutting out a little square, doing some measurements. So let's go ahead and I'll go do the cutout off camera and show you in just a moment. Okay, so I've gone ahead and drawn the outline around here. We're going to cut, and now I'm going to go ahead and cut. Okay, I've gone ahead and cut out the panel here that I've drawn, and now I'm just removing this little honeycomb area here. I took what they call the snap-off knife, but I don't think this is what they had in mind. So I grabbed another one, and I went ahead and cut deeply around all the different areas here. Okay, I've gone ahead and inserted the inserts. I found it easier to insert the shorter side inserts first and make sure they're as far over as they can get before putting these ones on, and it worked out really well once I did that. Okay, for the next step for the supporting arm, what we are going to do is install it so that the little indent here matches up with the single screw on here. So it'll go in like this. And then we want to do it so the teeth are down, so it ends up more like this. And what it suggests is to use some super glue to attach this. So I'm going to go ahead and start by installing the screws on here. And because of the way that the screws are kind of not perfectly round, it makes it really good for turning the screw. And in case you're wondering, this is a MIPS hex driver from back when I was flying some radio controlled vehicles like helicopters and stuff. And these were supposed to be like the premium ones that you could get for working on them. And they cost like, I think it was $40 for a set of 3 or something. Now I'll go ahead and put a little super glue on here. And because this holds pretty well already, I can just use it with the super glue on here. Okay, so we put a little super glue on all 4 sides, which is probably way more than enough. And let's slip that on. And there we go. And I'm going to go ahead and wipe that off with a paper towel, and because there's a little bit extra on here. and then attach it onto the arm. Earlier I had mentioned about putting water on the super glue to get it to dry instantly, and that's why when you get super glue on your hands or whatever, it seems to dry instantly because of the moisture in your hands. And that's actually how I kind of discovered the water thing. Okay, I've gone ahead and attached it to here. One thing I realized while I was working on this, I was kind of balancing it on the legs that were sticking up on the cabinet, what I'd built up so far, and it kind of came off and crashed into the tabletop, creating a small dent, which is mostly aesthetic, but something to keep in mind if you do decide to balance it like I did. So another thing is when you do dry the super glue with water, it does kind of create a cloudy appearance to it. That's the only downside to it. So I'm going to go ahead and attach the rest of the pieces to this, and here it is. I've gone ahead and attached all the little hinges and everything. One thing I noticed on this centering cap is one of the holes on here, this one, is immediately next to the hole that for the table leg in here. So what I ended up doing was I took 4 toothpicks and I shoved them in there and put a little wood filler on top, and waited probably like 5 or 10 minutes and sanded that down, and that worked really well. So that's something you may want to keep in mind when you're working on that. So next we're going to go ahead and prepare the back acrylic, and I need to drill 5 holes for the filament to go in. I got that 10mm drill bit that I ordered off of Amazon. It came today, which is great because I only ordered it yesterday. This one has a nice little point here, so I can get it exactly in the center, and it's really sharp. This is a good one. It was like a $10 drill bit, but it had a 5-star rating on it. I'll go ahead and link it down in the description. And here it is all cut out. It seems the 10mm hole that they chose was just an arbitrary number. It's not like there's any inserts that go in here, and they just put the PTFE tubes in here. So you could use any size drill bit you really want as long as the PTFE tube can fit in there. The drill bit that I ended up using worked really well. It was a lot easier than I was anticipating, and this was actually the step I was kind of dreading on this whole build. But it is done, and now I'm going to go ahead and continue. I believe the next step is to create the top. Then I insert all the acrylic pieces and then put the top on there. This is attached with some M3x10s. Okay. Okay, I've gone ahead and assembled the top part, the U piece here. When you go ahead and do that, you want to make sure all the acrylic insets here are lined up, or else you may get a piece backwards and have to undo it. Okay, I've gone ahead and inserted the acrylic sheets on the 3 sides, making sure that the one with the holes is in the back and that the holes are on the taller side because we wanted it to be 320mm from the bottom. And what I found easiest was to go ahead and insert all the sheets and then put the U-piece on top of the acrylic sheets and kind of get them inside of each of the tabs, and then kind of lower onto the legs on each of the 4 legs. So it was kind of a 3-step process that way, and it worked really well. What I'm going to go ahead and do now is attach each of the corners to here. Okay, I drilled a couple pilot holes that were about 2.5 millimeters, and that seems to be working much better now. At least the inside ones will be easier because they'll all be lined up. Okay, I've gone ahead and attached the hinges on here. The way I had to do it is I first got both the outside ones in, and then I opened it up. Then I had to kind of take out one of the outside ones and put one of the inside ones on, and then do the same thing with the other side, and then put the outside ones back in, and that seemed to work. It was just having a lot of trouble aligning, but once I did get it, it seems like it's really good. And it's kind of cool. As this goes down, it kind of folds up, and so it's still out of the way. Next, I'm going to go ahead and attach the doors onto here. It says the super glue is optional, and I'll see how it fits, but I have a feeling I'm going to want to super glue the doors in because they look like they're going to be a little bit wobbly. So I've gone ahead and installed the doors, and I ended up super gluing them, even though they actually set in there pretty well. If you kind of pulled on them, they would loosen, and I can just see myself getting a little annoyed at those coming out and having to super glue them anyways. So what I ended up doing is I put a little spot of super glue in each of the 2 corners, the top and bottom, and then I just slid it into the little hinge mounts. The next step is to actually start installing some of the MMU stuff, but I'm going to hold off on that because I haven't actually set up the MMU on my printer. So I think that about wraps it up for this part. In the next video, I'm going to be working on the MMU2S upgrade and putting that in my printer. And after that's done, in the final video, I'm going to go ahead and finish up the cabinet. Be sure to like if you like this video, and subscribe if you aren't already, and hit that bell icon if you want to be notified. And I'll see you in my next video. Okay, I've gone ahead and inserted the doors here, and I just super glued my foot to the floor. Luckily my foot's really dirty, so the super glue actually came right off.